Please join me in Gasho. In order to reach the other shore, one doesn't have to wait for the end of one's life. We can all reach the other shore right now by hearing and entrusting in the Buddha's vows and allowing Buddha's energy to fill our hearts and minds with wisdom, compassion, and thoughts to help us transcend the ordinary. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Nam Dao, Nam Dao. Thanks, everyone. That was from Reverend Earl Ikeda. He's the resident minister of the New York Buddhist Church, and he had written about OHIGAN in the Tricycle magazine back in 2018. I wanted to thank everyone who was able to attend, and for that matter, all the folks behind the scenes who helped produce our spring OHIGAN service last Sunday. It was the first time in 2 years since we were all able to get together and hold a live family service since the pandemic started, as remarked by Sunday service chair, Mr. Ralph Honda. And of course, a special thank you to Reverend Laverne Mori for putting it all together. We're living in difficult times. As I'm speaking to you, the war in Ukraine continues to proceed as we watch the military assault mostly Ukrainian civilians, a war playing out in horrible ways. This is on top of a global pandemic that may be in decline currently in the United States, but without guarantees of another variant sending us back to extreme protocols. And while our OHIGAN observance is still in mind, I would like to revisit how its central parable is meant to be a source of comfort and strength in difficult times, as suggested by the quote from Reverend Ikeda and in Reverend Mori's message. Let me just share some history about this parable. I'll explain why it's especially important to Shin Buddhists and how it serves as a way to deal with our difficulties. So what parable are we talking about? If you weren't able to attend last Sunday or haven't heard it before, in short, it's about a traveler beset by beasts and robbers on this shore, on this side of a river, trying to cross to the other shore of safety, who discovers an extraordinary narrow bridge that bisects not only one, but two rivers, one of water and the other of fire, a passage that appears to be impassable. The traveler is encouraged by the words of the historical Buddha and Amida Buddha to make the journey, to not be afraid, and to proceed. This is sometimes called the journey of the white path because in the parable, the narrow passage is said to be white in color. So what sutra does it come from? Well, it doesn't come from a sutra per se, but it does come from the Chinese Mahayana Buddhist canon. That is the Buddhist canon of works that are accepted and, if you will, approved. It has three baskets or divisions. Sometimes the canon in this way is called the Tripitaka, the Sanskrit word meaning the three baskets. So only one basket includes the sutras. A second basket includes instructions or rules, if you will, for monasteries. And the third basket includes commentaries by learned sages over the centuries. All three are approved or canonical sources for Buddhists in our tradition. In the Chinese canon, there are thousands of works across the three baskets. And one scholarly edition published 100 years ago in Japan fills 100 fat volumes. That is, the canon fills an entire bookcase. So this is why there's no such thing as a Buddhist Bible or a single book that people could go to study the Buddha's teachings. It's much better to start simple, respond to the teachings that seem to work for you, and proceed at your own pace. One of those teachings, of course, is the Nembutsu. Well, the parable itself comes from commentaries written by the Chinese scholar Shan Dao. He lived a mere 1,400 years ago. In Japanese, he's called Zendo. And if the name Zendo or Shandao is familiar, it's because Zendo is the fifth of the 7 important sages or masters identified by Shinran Shoni, who founded our sect. in the development of the ideas and practices behind Jodo Shinshu, or Shin Buddhism. It's also of note that Zendo is the last of the 7 masters from China. And that is that thereafter, the 6th and 7th masters both come from Japan. 6th master being Genshin, several hundred years after Zendo, and a little bit less time after Genshin was Honen, Shinran's teacher. Zendo is important for Shinran because he looked entirely to reciting the Nembutsu. That is, earlier sages among the 7 masters would include other practices also focused on Amida Buddha, such as recitation of sutras, or meditation, or ritual activities. So why is this parable so helpful to us, especially in difficult times? My thoughts are that the parable identifies our existential dilemma in vivid dream logic that speaks to us at a deeper level. One thought is that if we see ourselves truly, it's overwhelming. That is, we see our inabilities, we're beset with fears and doubts, we lack confidence, and it may seem that there isn't any way whatsoever to lead a meaningful life. That is, we may be stuck in a rut where we're not even sure how to live a meaningful life. Because at base, we realize that we're finite, we're going to die. So faced with that existential terror, or at least fear, how do we live? And our emotional response may seem like there is no solution to our problems. So that's why I'm suggesting dream logic. The parable is almost a nightmare. We are beset by wild beasts who will devour us and robbers who will kill us to steal our wealth. The only path is impossibly narrow. And although the path is a kind of bridge crossing the river, even nature appears to be crazy. Impossibly, the river on our left to the south is filled with flames, yet the river on our right to the north is filled with cataracts of water. Slipping either way would obviously kill us. Even trying to walk through these hazards, it seems impossible that we would survive. So of course, we're filled with fear, emotionally and unconsciously, we feel doubt and dread. And that's what the parable is speaking to. Now, logically, we always have options, but emotionally, we may feel that we don't at all. In the parable, the traveler feels he or she will die no matter what. Stay and you die, try to cross the rivers and you die. Well, logically, that may not seem to be the case. Emotionally, there is nothing we can do. No wonder we may feel like we're going crazy, because ultimately we're both logical and emotional. Such is the nature of dualism. In his article, Reverend Ikeda notes the term, that is OHIGAN, or the other shore, evokes the dualism of our lives as well as the oneness of the totality of our existence. That's because the other shore can be reached in this lifetime by trusting in the Buddha's vow. So how does this parable help us in times of difficulty and doubt? Reverend Ikeda suggests, and last week, Reverend Imori suggested, that awakening, symbolized via the shore or the Pure Land, is available to us right now. At this time, I can hear our retired minister, Reverend Kenji Akahoshi, in my ear saying about this time that we accomplish such a change in perspective through Shinran's phrase, a crosswise leap. At a spiritual level, I think you could even say we don't actually need to leap across the river of fire and water like Superman, and we don't even have to move forward along the white path, narrow as a balance beam across the rivers. We only have to change our perspective. Having changed our perspective from a spiritual point of view, seen deeply, this shore becomes the other shore. They say to the enlightened person this land of difficulty is the Pure Land. And we may sense this at times, even if for a nanosecond, perhaps when we're reciting Nembutsu, perhaps when we're appreciating nature. But to get back to our practice for reciting the Nembutsu, it's not magic, and it's not dream logic either. But we can say that it goes beyond logic to engage the unconscious as well as the conscious mind. It's a whole mind-body practice. Physically, we put our hands together in Gassho. Physically, we bow, we humble ourselves. Our ego doesn't like to bow, but here we're bowing. When we recite, it's a physical activity. Spiritually, it's a question as to who's calling whom at this point. Are we calling on Amida Buddha, or is he calling us? But we can say that the calling occurs. So because the Nembutsu engages mind and body, because it's a mind-body discipline like so much of Buddhist practice, it is an antidote to our occasional sense that there's nothing we can do, or paralysis of doubt and dread. Reciting the Nembutsu awakens in us the wisdom and compassion that is not just ours, but present throughout the world, present throughout the universe, which we symbolize by Amida Buddha, the Buddha of infinite light and life, of wisdom and compassion. With such wisdom and compassion, we can relax enough to deal with the problems on this shore, our world of samsara, where we must find ways to comfort ourselves and our children and parents, our friends and neighbors, so that we can find practical ways to cope. Things we can do, even across the ocean from the Ukraine, even distant from the people there, we can go ahead and send them oceans of love and oceans of comfort. Please join me in Gassho. In order to reach the other shore, one does not have to wait for the end of one's life. We can reach the other shore right now by hearing and entrusting in the Buddha's vows and allowing Buddha's energy to fill our hearts and minds with wisdom, compassion, and thoughts to help us transcend the ordinary. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo. Thanks so much for your kind attention. Please have a great week. Don't forget to recite the Nembutsu. Bye-bye.